Welcome to NFL Daily, where we're always going back for seconds and thirds. That's right, a trio of games on this Thanksgiving. I'm Gregg Rosenthal in my garage, joined for the first time by an intercontinental Thanksgiving guest. Yes, it's Will Gavin. It's already Friday in the UK. Will Gavin from talkSport. If you listen to what some people called the most insane recap of the year back in week 6, thank you for staying up early or late, whatever it is, Will, and talking about these games with me.
No, absolutely love it. Thanks for having me. I do feel like mentioning going up for seconds or thirds feels like a direct shot at me before we've even started the show. But, you know, I can take it on the chin. That's fine.
No, it is absolutely not. It's what I did tonight, and we just had a lot of great bread products. I think we overloaded, which you got to have, but we had 2 different types of cornbread because my daughter wanted to make one. Then we had some biscuits, and just like, I did not feel well a couple hours ago, but I feel better now. We have 3 fun games to talk about. Maybe at the very end, we'll talk a little bit more about our Thanksgiving. I'm curious what it's like to be a Brit watching these games. But first, let's start with the night game, because maybe it wasn't the best game of the day, but I think it's the most important to Lambeau.
Loving the shotgun to the setback. Josh Jacobs to his right. Snap. Give. Fake to Jacobs. Quick toss. Reed left side. Breaks. Touchdown. 5. End zone. Touchdown. Jayden Reed. His second touchdown of the night. It's 20-3. Green Bay.
Yes, Jayden Reed getting it done. They just dial up all the best plays for Jayden Reed. That got it to 21-3 in the second half. The Packers go on to win 30-17. That was Wayne Larrivee, of course, from WRNW in Green Bay. Packers get that big lead, and maybe I'll just start with Reed, because as I was watching this game, Will, I had a theory, and it's like Jayden Reed is Matt LaFleur's muse. He always comes up with the good stuff for Jayden Reed, and Jayden Reed always executes it. They showed a stat that Jayden Reed now has as many touchdowns or more than any Packer in history in his first 2 years as a receiver. And you think of that touchdown, beautiful blocking. The receivers do a great job blocking all season long. They get Reed into the end zone on a nice swing pass. And they have the first Reed touchdown on a play where he makes it like he's run blocking for a couple of seconds. I don't know if I'd call it trickery, but very creative. And then he spins out, and Love puts it perfect timing for that touchdown. Reed had a nice run earlier in the game. And I know that's not the biggest big picture take here, but Matt LaFleur always seems to know how to use Jayden Reed in such a way to make him at his best. And that's kind of LaFleur's magic with his entire team. This offense was humming tonight.
Yeah, look, just 2 catches in that first half, but both of them touchdowns. And you mentioned the blocking downfield. You do feel like this is a receiving core and an entire Packers offense that finally starting to look like it actually has a real identity over the last couple of games. Like a lot of that is to do with the rushing, and a lot of that is to do with Josh Jacobs, I'm sure we'll come on to. But yeah, Jayden Reed, I went into this season being very doubtful. And it was very much like a fantasy thing where people are taking him mid-rounds, even earlier rounds. I'm like, yeah, okay, so this guy was good last year, but he had, 12-plus touchdowns. If you're just relying on that, that's never going to happen. But he is a guy who can have 2 catches and just 2 touchdowns. So apparently I was horribly wrong. He did have the great end-around play as well, that 23-yarder on the ground, which really helped boost his night. But it's amazing you come out of this game talking about him, despite the fact that just 3 catches for 24 yards plus that.
He's what
rush.
Your guy Debo used to be, not to bring up any sore subjects for 49ers fans, but he really reminds me of him. Obviously, he's a lot lighter and a different style of player, but there aren't that many players that can impact a game like Jayden Reed does on special design plays. And like you said, have 4 touches tonight, 2 for touchdowns, and that run was the best run that anyone had all night, just in terms of pure talent. Now, my theory is that Jayden Reed is Matt LaFleur's muse. He always comes up with the good stuff for Jayden Reed. Christian Watson, on the other hand, I believe is Jordan Love's muse. Because 2 catches for Christian Watson tonight, that's it, on 4 targets. But those 2 throws were absolutely incredible by Jordan Love. The the deep one down the sideline that just shows off Love's arm strength, and then another key one on the drive late in the second quarter that helps set them up into a tight window, the turkey shot that John Gruden used to talk about between the zone, the deep defender, and the underneath. And Jordan Love always seems to make his best passes to Christian Watson. Watson doesn't always catch him. There was probably a PI on a late target that they didn't give to the Packers, but it kind of shows off what Love can do, and it's just this group of players that are very cohesive. I think you're right. They have an identity. Even on a night where they didn't have Romeo Doubs on the field, they had more than enough with Tucker Kraft and those two receivers.
Yeah, that deep shot on the 3rd and 6th in the third quarter where he hit him down that right-hand sideline was... Not only was it like a proper ballsy play call, the way he stepped up in the pocket, the way he kept calm as it was collapsing around him and just absolutely hit Watson in stride was sensational. I'm glad you mentioned the defense pass interference because what a dreadful call that was. And Matt LaFleur made it clear. I love that when you're up by like 3 clear scores, you've still got Matt LaFleur on the sideline giving the referees just that much stick. Was lovely.
No, because that was his moment. That was LaFleur moment. And so if you didn't watch the game, and you're tuning in on Friday to listen to this, thank you very much. We love you. It's 30-17. And yes, the game seems all but over. It's 2 minutes and 10 seconds left probably when they snap that ball, something like that. But they're going for the kill shot. Almost anyone going into the 2-minute warning is just going to run the ball there and punt and try to kill the clock or whatever. Maybe you throw a short pass. But they're like, we've got this howitzer that's just this thing of beauty. Let's take our shot right now and give the fans something fun to leave and stick it to our old friend Mike McDaniel. So I love coaches like that, like Matt LaFleur, who's going to let his players have some fun. It didn't work, but it was worth it. I'd get mad too.
I did thoroughly enjoy, and when I say thoroughly enjoy, I mean that with as much dripping British sarcasm as humanly possible, because I didn't enjoy much that Jason Garrett did on co-coms tonight. Ooh. But I did love him when Saran Neal came across and contacted him horribly early for one of the most obvious defensive pass interference. Like it was textbook. It was like teaching tape pass interference for officials, and he kind of went, "Oh yeah, he did maybe get there a little early." And I was just like.
Wait, what else didn't you like about Garrett? I have a lot to get to with this game because what a no-show for the Dolphins in a big spot, and we're going to get to that while we're giving the Packers some credit off the top. But what didn't you like about Jason Garrett?
I think after 3 hours of Tom Brady just hating life of watching one of the worst quarterback matchups we've had in the NFL this season, but doing it with a lot of fun. I just needed Jason Garrett to be just in a bit of fun Thanksgiving mode or to just give us the tiniest bit of insight. But what he did on almost every play was took exactly what the comms said and just repeated it in a more flowery way. Like not once did we hear anything that was like actually delivering you anything that you learned. Like this is a guy who was a head coach in the NFL for many years and just gave us absolutely nothing about game management, absolutely nothing about the play design, absolutely. And I found it a tough
I love
listen.
it.
I'm not going to
I love it. If we're going to keep Will up till 4 a.m, like give him something. Like give him something. I like the cutting criticism here. We'll get back to the
There's one other Christian Watson play as well I wanted to highlight. It was early on in the game when it was still a single score, where Dontavian Wicks had a horrendous drop and Christian Watson went full defensive back to stop the tip ball interception. And I don't know, it was just one of those plays that it doesn't show up on the box score and it doesn't show up in a 2-score win late on. People don't pay attention to it later, but it just told me a lot about the way that this offense is coached, about the way that they're always never giving up on plays, we talked about it, the way the receivers block downfield. It just said to me, like, this is an offense that isn't going to switch off. And I don't know, I've not really been excited about the Packers before tonight. And now I kind of feel like even on the road in the playoffs, I'd fancy them to have a chance against even the best teams in the conference. So yeah, I'm getting on the Packers hype train a little bit after.
Okay, so I don't think the Packers have played to their potential. They haven't played many complete games. This was one of their best games of the season. But I have been excited to watch them because Love, he's a roller coaster. Now, this is 2 straight games for him without an interception, and he had one in every game before this, so that's a positive. sign. Their running game is so dynamic, so diverse, and it really didn't get going today. Josh Jacobs talked about it afterwards. He was held to 43 yards on the ground on 19 carries, had the big reception that we'll mention in a minute. But Chris Brooks had some runs. Emmanuel Wilson had some runs. One of the biggest plays of the game, actually, I thought, was they trusted the running game enough to hand it off to Emmanuel Wilson, who's been great this year, on a 3rd and 4 outside the 20-yard line. I think the score was 7-3, and he runs that thing all the way inside the 10. And they can run power, they can run duo, they can run zone, they can do it all. They're very cohesive. It's a good offensive line, and that kind of brings me to my criticism of the Dolphins here. And I got some more love for the Packers, but you're not beating the allegations, Dolphins. Like, this is it. This is the same thing. We just keep saying the same thing, and their fans are like, well, it's not fair. It's not fair. Like this, that, and the other. And it's just the same thing. It's not a narrative that they play worse late in the season or that they can't play in the cold. It's just the facts. And maybe they'll play better down the stretch here because they have a good schedule, and they certainly were playing well coming into this game. But their pass rush lost repeatedly tonight. Did not bother Jordan Love at all. Jordan Love struggled against pressure all season long. His numbers actually were pretty good. I checked Next Gen Stats, 4 for 5 for 38 yards and a touchdown tonight. But the key number there is 5. Like he was barely pressured at all. So that's showing a lack of toughness there. You can't run the ball. This was a Dolphins team that was able to run the ball, and they just can't. And the key sequence to me, Will, in the entire game is they're down 2 scores, 27-11, and they get the ball down to the 1-yard line after an 8-yard run to get it there. They get stuffed on 2nd down, and then McDaniel gives up on trying to run. They were inside the 1-yard line, 2 straight plays. They run these kind of crossers that they're known to run for, and the defense is absolutely ready for it, and their offensive line loses pretty quickly on both plays. And Green Bay knew what was coming because this is a team that loves to run those plays on the goal line. And this is the exact same thing that the 2022 and 23 Dolphins had trouble with. Like, they couldn't run in short yardage in big situations, and that's got to be so frustrating as the snow is falling down that they're just kind of living up to what everyone has said about them in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it was a bit of a weird second half from the Packers defense in terms of that they softened up a lot in the middle of the field. But the touchdown drive just before that, and then the drive that you're talking about that went down to the 1-yard line, Tua goes 11 of 12 over the course of those 2 drives. First one, 8 plays, 70 yards. That second one, 12 plays, 77 yards. And you're thinking, this is actually a bit of offense from the Dolphins. We're starting to see them, Jalen Waddle made a couple of catches. Tyreek Hill finally started warming into the game a little bit. Jonnu Smith was by far their most targeted guy on the day. And you got into that short yardage situation, and they threatened on that play like a quarterback keeper with Alec Ingold running across the formation. And then just, I don't know whether it was the offensive line collapsing. I don't know if it's just the way that Green Bay read it. I thought it was a brilliant play from Quay Walker, who also had a big pressure on the 3rd down as well. And I thought it was one of the real bright spots of that Green Bay defense all day. But you're right. It's been amazing this year to watch guys from that same tree. And I think you've had the same problems with Shanahan, the same problems with McVay, just absolutely lose all creativity and lock up when they get in the red zone. Like, I don't understand how they haven't developed this brilliant array. Like, even if you just do something really simple there with Tua, like run a naked boot, try and open up one side of the field, have a couple of guys in the end zone who might get open, you've got more chance of completing it than just that bizarre mishmash of 2 or 3 different plays that they tried to run and just failed miserably and ended up with the sack. So there was a little brief moment there. It was like 3:30 in the UK at that point. I'm like, right, we've got a game on our hands. Let's go. And then they fail on that conversion, and it's the normal time where I would turn the TV off, catch the rest of the highlights later.
I'm not going to apologize. We're having fun, and look, at this pace, this is going to be a long one. And look, I get it. Tua's playing great. I came into this game saying Tua's going to be on QB Island. He ended up throwing for 365 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. I say thank you to Tua as a representative for all his fantasy owners. You've been beautiful the last 3 weeks. Like, yeah, I'm keeping Kyler Murray on the bench for you, and you're coming through. So it's not that he's playing poorly, but tonight the running game, Mostert goes 5 for 19. Achane goes 7 for 14. They're one of the worst running teams in the league. And that is such a difference between the last couple of years and this year. And Mike McDaniel, that's where he made his bones. And that's where I think the lack of talent on the offensive line comes through. And for one of the first times all season, their pass protection, at least on a couple key plays, didn't come through either. It wasn't terrible all night, but there was the play in the first half where Armstead didn't get out of his stance and Enigbari got a sack that was actually back-to-back plays with the sack. And they had just enough failures. They have such little margin for error, Will. I think that's what gets me. I've been enjoying this Dolphins team. And I wanted them to win this game to maybe go on a run because they're 5-7 now. They have to win out basically to have a chance. And they have a schedule that you could win out against, but that's a tough ask at 5-7. I don't think they can do it. They have such a small margin for error. They don't really run the ball well, and they don't throw the ball vertically anymore. So they're probably the best in the league at everything else, at throwing the ball short, essentially. Like, they are the best at the ball handling and the timing and all that. Like, number one. But it's just hard to keep winning with no verticality and no running game. That's a tough combination.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned the verticality, because it's exactly like Devon Achane had a great game in the receiving today, as much as they didn't run the ball well. He was 8 of 56 with the touchdown as well. I haven't got the A dot on his targets yet, but I bet that it's about 2 yards, because it was all check downs that he did something phenomenal on the back end. And they were well designed, that it was the right choice of Tua to take the check down. Check downs like this dirty word, but anyone who, like you and I, loves Phillip Rivers as much as we do, know that check down offense is a legitimate offense, and it can get you yardage and it can win you games, like it almost did for them today. But the big question that I saw all across social media, and I want to ask you about, is what's going on with Tyreek Hill? Like, he had some inflated stats in the end in this game. Like, he had the catch at the end of the third on the comeback, which he slips on it. And so many times in the past, hundreds of times in the past, we've seen him on that kind of catch, turn up field, break a tackle, make a guy miss, and take a 6-yard gain for 25 yards. And as I was writing that down, in fact, he did have that big 24-yard gain as I was making that note, and I nearly deleted it. I thought, no, because it still highlights how...
It was garbage time. It was garbage time.
Exactly, as was his touchdown, garbage time. And, like, if you take out that final 2 drives of the game when they were already pretty much out of it, Tyreek Hill had absolutely nothing to show for today. He is carrying this wrist injury. He says he's not going to have surgery till the offseason. Don't know how much that's affecting him, but I don't see any of the separation. I don't see any of the burst up field. I just like all that stuff that made him really special just wasn't there today and hasn't been there enough this year.
I totally agree. That's been on my radar. They gave him a monster extension before the season. He is now, how old is he? He's 30 years old. He'll turn 31 before next year. That's not a death sentence, but he's, I think, on the way down. I think it's safe to say, like, at his peak, which was an extended peak and was peaking last year, through most of that year. Since about this time last year through now, the production and the explosion just hasn't been quite as good. And you pay him that much money. They're such a top-heavy team. Yeah, you want more than 650 yards through this point in the season, which he had in 80 of those. Yeah, tonight a lot of them were in garbage time. It's just been a little off. It's hard to get him and Waddle going at the same time. Jonnu Smith, speaking of fantasy, I mean, he goes 10 for 113. Those drives in the second half, that was the Dolphins team that I've seen. And it's not like they were awful in the first half. It was more that Tua was 10 for 11 at one point, or 8 for... I remember he had one completion, and the Packers were driving to go up 3 scores. It was like they had only had the ball a couple times, and their defense let them down. And so that's part of the thing I've pushed back a little bit with Dolphins fans this year too, is your team shouldn't collapse that hard when you lose your backup quarterback. So that's on your coaching staff, that everything fell apart that bad for now. But I'm doing the math roughly in my head. I believe they are now 4-4 in Tua games. So you also can't tell me that they're some great team with Tua. They're literally 4-4. They were 1-1 when he got hurt, because they were losing that game 31-10 in the middle of the third quarter. And they lost the first couple games when he came back against good teams, won 3 straight, and now this one. And so that just speaks to a team that's in the middle of the road. Like they probably should be 6-6, not 5-7, but a team that's in the middle of the road probably isn't going to win the rest of their games. They have the Jets, they're at the Texans, they have the 49ers, which who knows what they'll look like. And then they are at Cleveland and at the Jets. The Texans are actually at home. Like, yeah, I actually would make the Dolphins slight favorites at least in all those games. Like, I think they're favored in all those games. So sure, you could win them all, but the odds on doing it are pretty slim at this point.
Andrew Brandt, who I know is, famed for being slightly favorable towards the Packers, let's say, but did tweet
worked for them, yes.
Did tweet pointing out that Tyreek Hill's getting $26 million this year. Jalen Waddle's getting $20 million this year. The Packers leading 7 receivers are getting $8 million between them. I know those guys are going to now be getting paid as we get towards the end of the season. And, there was so much talk for so long about them not taking a first-round receiver and just taking these mid-round guys. But it's showing out. And, it just shows that play design and coaching makes a huge difference. And you're absolutely right. Mike McDaniels deserves more. I'm a football nerd. Of course I love Mike McDaniels. All football nerds do. But him and the front office deserve a lot of stick for not making this team work without Tua, for not having a backup option for a guy who is so injury prone. And, this is a season where they could definitely be a playoff team based on everything they've got on their roster. And they're probably going to peter out and end up 8, 9, 10, somewhere around that point. And it's disappointing.
It is. They missed a lot of tackles tonight. The Packers had 132 yards after missed tackles. The success rate for the Packers on the ground actually managed to be 40%, which is fine. And the Dolphins were much, much lower. Again, you're not beating the allegations. You know who is? I don't know who has allegations for Josh Jacobs right now. Probably no one. Let's listen to the call of his big reception in the second half.
On 1st and 10, Love under center. 2 tight ends in the game. Melton in motion to the left. Love takes, fakes the handoff to Jacobs, steps up in the pocket, dumps it off left side, and he's got Jacobs. Slips the defender 40, 45 outside the numbers 50 to the 45-40, breaks the tackle, 35-30, and taken down inside the 20-yard line. My goodness, Josh Jacobs would not go down.
Oh, that's a great call. And just one of my favorite moves I've seen all season. The way he made Dotson, that was who it was, fly. Mm-hmm. David Long was involved there too, right? No, David Long got cut. What am I saying? I saw David Long earlier in the day on the Lions. That was just a sweet, sweet play by a Packers team who came together at this time last year, Will. I know they haven't been great all year, but they've been winning while being a little confusing. They're 9-3. In any other year, they'd be like, hey, maybe we'll get the 2 seed. They got some work to do just to be the number 2 team in their own division. They're at Detroit next week on Thursday night. Jordan Rodriguez is going to do that recap with me. That is one of the games of the year so far, and they absolutely have the pieces to get better and play their best down the stretch. And they'll need to because they have some tough road games. Lions, Seahawks, and Vikings all on the road down the stretch.
Yeah, look, I'm aware we're going super long on this game, but Josh Jacobs, unreal contact balance, sensational to break that tackle. And obviously, I saw what he did to the 49ers last week. In a season where we got Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, it's hard to look beyond those two as free agent running backs when you consider how well he's done there and how well Aaron Jones has done over in Minnesota as well. The running back's back, baby.
It is absolutely back, and he has been a huge part of that team. And I can't wait to watch this team the rest of the way because I think Jordan Love is getting more and more confident. There were just a couple throws. He was under control today, but that throw he made when he was on the run to Reed, all it did was set up a field goal to be shorter, to take a 3-score lead in the fourth quarter and move the ball down to the 4-yard line. But that is one of the best throws you will ever see. The arm strength he has while throwing on a total run, and then Reed one-hands it. That's just hey, our athletes are better than your athletes. The Packers have some great athletes. They're not the only ones in that division. Let's go to Detroit, where, yes, the Lions were trying to get off a 7-game losing streak on Thanksgiving. Surely they do it against the Bears, right?
Williams with 10 seconds to go in the game. Williams with 7. Williams with 6. Takes the snap. This could be the final play of the game. Throws it deep downfield. It is up for grabs and incomplete. That's it. That's it. That's it. What in the world were the Bears thinking?
Matt Eberflus.
This game is over.
Wait a minute.
You talk about the world of clock mismanagement.
The game is over.
Dan Miller and Lomas Brown. Well said on WXYT. What are the Bears thinking? Matt Eberflus is the answer for Lomas Brown. The Lions escape. That game was sitting there for the Bears to steal at the very end, 23-20. Caleb Williams moving the ball down the field, and if you were around a television at all today, you probably know the circumstances, but he was sacked, Will, with 32 seconds left. They had a timeout. They were in field goal range. Cairo Santos said after the game, I was ready to go kick it right there from 58 yards. That's in my range if I needed to. They not only never got any closer for a kick, they never kicked it all. They never used the timeout. They waste all that time, and then Caleb throws it down the field. One of the worst end of game sequences you'll ever see. My God.
There's a really funny video that was tweeted out by Sean Hammond, the Bears beat writer at halftime, of Cairo Santos out taking long field goals while Shabuzi was doing the halftime show, just out of camera shot. And it's well worth going and looking at because it's very, very funny. But Cairo Santos, when he meant he was ready, he meant he was ready to go. And we get onto Eberflus and we'll get onto the Williams of it, but I do think it is worth teeing up slightly as we'll talk about Williams' performance overall in this game. That on the 1st and 10 from the 25-yard line, he had DJ Moore streaking across the formation, and if he throws that with even the tiniest modicum of anticipation, just gets that ball out a second earlier and ahead of his man, it's 6 points and they've won this game of football, and none of this ever happens. Instead, he throws it into his feet, he throws it late, and then they get sacked by Za'Darius Smith on the next play, and we all know what happens from that point onwards. I think Eberflus deserves all of the stick that he's getting. I totally get it. But what I've seen that's been, I think, really interesting has been a lot of people saying, right, I think there are two options, right? They either take the timeout straight away, they get their heads clear, they get their best play to get the ball to the sideline and get it out of bounds, or to the middle of the field and spike it in time so they can go and take the field goal, right? Or they do what they did. They let the play run down, try and get the ball over the middle, and then take the time out. I don't know what the play was they decided to run was absolutely bizarre, going for it all. But I've seen a lot of people saying, why isn't Eberflus calling the timeout once it's clear that Caleb Williams is in his own head? He's getting to the line of scrimmage at 13 seconds. He's not snapping the ball to 6 seconds as he's trying to read this defense Peyton Manning style. I'm just you can't have that middle ground. If he calls that timeout with 10 seconds remaining, you're still left with a situation where you've got...
It still would be better. You could just kick it. You could just kick it. I mean, everyone would kill him there. I agree. That's a weird thing to criticize. Take it. You should have taken it with 10, 13 seconds left, something like that. There's a big blame pie here. And Caleb Williams, he will be better in that situation in a couple of years, probably in a couple of weeks after going through that. He absolutely deserves a big part of that. He's out there changing the plays. They actually get lined up with about 16, 17 seconds left. So I think, which it's crazy because then they don't snap it for another 9 seconds. They sit there with over the ball for 10 seconds, which is absolutely crazy.
Ridiculous.
He kind of lost his mind in that moment, and it is tricky. But that's why you take the timeout in the first place. I hope a listener reminds me of what I'm thinking of. There was a very subtle situation that was so similar in the last couple of weeks, and if I didn't have my family here, I would have poured through and tried to figure it out. But it was a very similar situation where it happened, and so many times in these late game situations, I believe that one was with maybe 40, 50 seconds left, but the coach immediately used the timeout because you just know after an unexpected sack like that where you backed up 10 yards, it is very difficult to get everything under control and know what you're supposed to do and know what play to call. And so you call a timeout right away because you know you have a rookie quarterback and you have 30 plus seconds there. And now you can't spike the ball after a throw over the middle. So that's why what Matt Eberflus said after the game in his mind sounded correct. Let's actually listen to old Matty. Maybe his last press conference as a Bears coach. We'll see.
I like what we did there. Again, once it's under 7, you're gonna call timeout there, or actually under 12, and then really you don't have an option. Because it's 3rd to 4th, you got to throw it into the end zone then. So to me, it's I think we handled it the right way. I do believe that you just re-rack the play, get it in bounce, and call timeout, and that's why we held it, and didn't work out the way we wanted it to.
Oh, he's so confident saying it too. It's not intentional.
Like you say, he's so confident saying it. It is full blown gaslighting. Like he is convinced. He's trying to convince us with this word salad that what he did was in any way right.
No,
and
I think he believes it. I think he. I don't need to name names, but he is a politician that believes everything he says, and that's why the lies work. Like, I think he believes it. Now, what he might not intend to do, because he tried to do the whole I take full responsibility, I'm the coach. But he did say that at some point. But saying that is not taking full responsibility, because saying that is essentially saying Caleb Williams messed up. Because what he is saying is, I like what we did there. He's saying, like, yeah, I thought we were going to get the playoff with 20-something seconds left, and the operation wasn't going to be so slow, and that Caleb wasn't going to stand over the ball for 15 seconds. It all would have made sense to, quote, re-rack the play, get it off with 17 seconds left or whatever it is, and execute it well, but they didn't execute it well. So he's essentially, in my mind, saying the thought process was right. They just didn't do it right. That's how I read it.
Yeah, this is why I wanted to highlight that Caleb isn't completely without fault, because I think he has gone kind of blameless on social media, etc. But look, they've 6 losses in a row now, and 4 of those are the Hail Mary against Washington, the Packers blocked field goal, where should they have gained more yardage before they took that field goal, the overtime loss to the Vikings, and then this one. And with all of them, the game management has been absolutely horrendous. And really, for 2.5 years and 13 weeks into this season, the game management has been consistently bad under Eberflus. Like, I used to bang this drum about being like, you need to have a coach who is just there to tell you what to do situationally, whose their whole job is to know clock management and to be on top of it. But a lot of teams actually do have that now, and they sit up in the booth and they do tell them what to do, and they still get it wrong despite having an expert who's literally in the building doing that. And yeah,
or have a coach that's pretty good at it. Like that's an option too. A Dan Campbell, a John Harbaugh. Eberflus was later asked in that press conference if he expects to be the Bears head coach next week, which is a tough question. And he just said, I'm going to keep grinding and show up. But the fact that those questions are being asked, it's just, there's so many different stats. They're the first team in NFL history to go on a 6-game losing streak without having multiple turnovers in any of those games. Just kind of interesting. All Eberflus talks about is don't turn the ball over, don't turn the ball over. And he's shown how you can lose. Keenan Allen said at one point, we did enough as players in that game. So that kind of says it all. He also said he was totally surprised that was the last play of the game. He thought, like, everyone on the field thought, oh, we must have more time, right? Like, that couldn't be how the game ended. They didn't know. And then he said he looked up and saw that they still had a timeout and said, like, oh, yeah. And DJ Moore said, we keep coming back in these games, putting ourselves in position, and then we shit the bed. And, that's what they do. The worst record in one-score games, to your point, Will, since Eberflus took over, are the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, shocking. And look, when you look at what they did overall in this game, like, it's a game that, based on the first half, they had no right to be in this game late on, right? Caleb goes 5 of 15 for just 34 yards in the first half. Second half comes out 14 of 20, 208 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Let's go.
Did lead them down the field on that drive, did look like they were going really positive. And this was without much of a running game whatsoever. Like, DeAndre Swift had that 3rd and 1 where he picked up 10 plus yards on that final drive. But prior to that, Caleb had the top 3 rushes on the team on the day. Like, they just weren't moving the ball particularly well at all on the ground. And so, the Lions got a bit soft in that second half. Injuries, I think, really hurt them in a big way as well. There were some really bizarre incidents throughout the game that we'll kind of get into on both sides of the ball, I imagine. But this is a game that shouldn't have been there for the Bears, and then very much was there for the Bears, and they just feel like a team who don't know how to get out of their own way right now.
No, that game was such a one-sided game, and the Lions didn't take advantage because they struggled in the red zone in the first half. At one point in the first half, the Lions had 18 first downs, and the Bears had 9 plays. Now, from that point forward, the Bears more or less dominated. I'm not going to say I'm concerned if I was a Lions fan, but the Bears came back in that game. There were a couple of moments in the second half. Campbell not going for it on 4th and 2 at about his own 40 to kick it back to the Bears that last time. They kind of blinked there, where I was like, oh, that's a little surprising that Dan Campbell's not being aggressive in this moment, the way that their defense was playing. And the way their defense was playing was in large part because of the injuries in this game. Let's go through them. Josh Paschal, their starting edge. They've had so many edge injuries, out with a knee injury. Malcolm Rodriguez left the game. Mekhi Wingo, one of their defensive linemen, left the game. DJ Reader and Zadarius Smith both left the game but returned. And Reader actually got a quarterback hit, Will, on that play where Caleb Williams threw it at DJ Moore's feet. So he probably should have made that play, but it was a big play by DJ Reader on that play. To get a QB hit and at least bother Caleb Williams. So he returned. Levi Onwuzurike, who's been great for them in the middle with Aleem McNeil, hurt his hamstring in this game. So that is a number of key defensive linemen. It's been just a cascade of injuries at one position, and you could see Caleb Williams getting more comfortable as the game went on and having a lot of time and picking on some mismatches. You got Kindle Vildor out there. They didn't have Carlton Davis and Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. Like, those were mismatches on the outside. And you think ahead to next week with Packers Lions, and if they can't get healthy, they could be in trouble on defense.
Yeah, and look, it's a defense that Aaron Glenn has managed to both scheme up and coach up to do brilliant things without Aiden Hutchinson and without some of their best players. And you mentioned, missing key pieces in that secondary today. Next Gen Stats had a tweet that, Zadarius Smith, Al-Qadim Mohammed and DJ Reader all had 7+ pressures in this game, which means
still got after him.
Yeah, Caleb was pressured on 17 dropbacks without them blitzing, which is the most in the Dan Campbell era. And that's not meant to be. The idea was you lose Aiden Hutchinson, you're going to struggle, right? But Zadarius Smith comes in and they decide not to line him up as the kind of just a replacement for Aiden Hutchinson, which I think wouldn't have worked. But they've got him playing up the middle. He had that brilliant spin move on the inside to force Caleb outside on the pocket on this second drive to force the 3 and out, got the sack at the end of the game, which obviously caused such huge issues. Like, I thought he was absolutely sensational in this game, despite
good call,
the fact that he's going against a pretty bad offensive line. And yeah, the Lions defense keeps finding ways to win despite everything. And yet in this second half, there was enough concern from me that goes, if they were playing a really good, organized football team who kind of were well coached and knew what they were doing, this would be a dropped game for them. And I suspect that the Packers are exactly that kind of team next week.
Yeah, it's tough to know what to make of it because, like I said, like in the first quarter, it was 145 yards to 5, but they kept bogging down in the red zone. They were throwing a lot in the red zone instead of running. And then Jahmyr Gibbs had that fumble as they were going in up 16-0, I believe, at the time, at the end of the second quarter. And that fumble gave the Bears a little life where they would have been out of it if they had gone in there 23-0 at halftime. Instead, Gibbs fumbles, and it was a low possession game. I was thinking, wow, the Lions offense really, struggled in the second half, but they really didn't. They had a touchdown drive, and then in the fourth quarter, they did punt 2 different times. It was a 4 and out. They missed a field goal on a short field where they had stopped the Bears, and Jake Bates could have put it away. And then they had that 3-and-out that I mentioned where Goff didn't even get to make a throw. They just ran it 3 straight times. They got stuffed on 3rd and 2 and got backed up a half a yard. And Dan Campbell at that moment, it's about 3.5 minutes left. And I'm thinking, I know you don't want to give him good field position, but I trust your offense more right now than your defense. And he decided to punt it away. It was almost like, hey, offensive line, you just gave up a yard. You haven't earned the right to go for this 4th down. And so he's always been good knowing his team. He punted it away. And at that point, I thought, wow, I think the Bears are going to win this game, which probably not a lot of Bears fans were thinking. They're too jaded after all these years to actually think something good was going to happen. Because I really thought the way Caleb was moving the ball at that point in the game, they scored the touchdown on a nice drive right after halftime, and then a couple more touchdowns before that last drive. I thought they were going to go down the field and win this damn thing, which would have been quite a story. But instead, the Lions get to 11-1, and the Bears get to 4-8. Who knows if the Bears change coaches? I know there's a lot of focus on the Bears, and they're not even the relevant team. It doesn't matter if they change coaches this week. They're going to change coaches at the end of the season. That's kind of what matters.
Yeah, I do wonder how much concern there is for. I know you said they didn't play poorly in the second half, the Lions offense, but it did seem weird they went away from the run as much as they did. Jahmyr Gibbs had nearly 12 yards per rush in the first half. They had 144 yards on the ground in that first half. And then I think he only had 4 rushing yards in the second half, Gibbs. And they, I mean, I know they've got the 1-2 punch with Montgomery and he saw a lot of the ball, but it just felt like that got completely shut down, that part of the game. You know, Amon-Ra St. Brown only gets 2 targets in the second half. Jameson Williams only gets 1 target, which was on that catch where he had that ridiculous hurdle, which it's amazing that's not a play we end up talking more about, because it's the kind of thing that, like, you know, if it happened at week 1 of the season, we're going, oh my God, that's some of the greatest athleticism we've ever seen. And yet
I've never seen a hurdle like that, because it wasn't like a jump up hurdle. It was a sprinting 4.4, 4.3 speed hurdle straight forward. That was incredible.
Like a full-blown just hurdle, like a hurdler hurdling. Like, it was insane. I did actually, on the Jameson Williams thing, I wanted to know your thoughts on him throwing the ball into Tyreek Stevenson's face and getting flagged for it. And the reason that I wanted to bring it up wasn't so much the decision itself, because Jameson Williams feels like a guy that has that in his locker, like he's got a bit of that to his background and stuff. But it was the moment they showed on the sideline when Antoine Randall was absolutely just reaming him out like a dad telling off like his teenager who's come in 2 hours after his curfew and clearly stinks of cheap whiskey. And he's just like absolutely. And James Williams is desperately pleading his case. And he's basically saying, no, that was stupid. What are you doing? And I think it was a real good players as coach moments. We've talked about that a lot this year with, like, you know, Kevin O'Connell and D'Amico Ryans and guys like that. But yeah, I loved watching Antoine Randall just give him 2 barrels. It was really good fun.
I just love all the old friends he has on the sideline. We got, I mean, I'm old enough to remember Aaron Glenn as a player. We got Deuce Staley over there. We got Randall L. Like, it's a fun staff to just watch. And sometimes you just got to survive games like this. The Bears have given them a lot of troubles, not just beating them on Thanksgiving, but generally they've shut down the Ben Johnson offense under Eberflus. So I was trying to think, what do they do well? Now, they're a really good situational defense. They've been great in the red zone all year, and they're pretty good on 3rd downs. I checked the next gen stats. They only gave up 5.4 yards per attempt on play action today, and Goff had a lot of play action. They only gave up 5.6 yards per attempt on in breakers to Goff, and I think the broadcast talked a little bit about just they really flood the middle of the field, so that they're good in the red zone. They managed to take away the middle of the field. I think teams could at least look at what Chicago has done over the years to Detroit and try to gummy it up. And maybe it's just a matchup issue that's difficult for Detroit, but you give Eberflus some credit there, because I did not think they would be able to hang defensively in this game. They really haven't been a good defense overall this year. They're not a good run defense. They weren't today, but the Lions didn't really have many running attempts in the second half. And they're not a good pass rush, and they weren't for most of today either, and they managed to survive. So there's something, but that's kind of the Matt Eberflus defense of, like, the things they do well does not make up nearly enough for all the shortcomings.
Yeah, I wrote down on first half red zone struggles, Kyler Gordon should have picked Jared Goff
Yes.
off on that opening drive. A little bit of turnover luck for him there, but I wrote exactly that. They did a really good job of flooding the middle of the field, taking away those in-breakers, stopping them from doing what they do so brilliantly. And actually, like, Javon Dexter had that brilliant sack on the third possession, but also had some really good stops early on. And they seemed to turn it on in the red zone. And I was trying to figure out, watching it back, was it Lions struggles and play calling in the red zone? But I thought there were good plays there, and I thought they were decent execution. I just thought that the Bears tightened up really well when he got into that area. The Lions did try and throw a touchdown with Penei Sewell, which was one of when that happened so early in the night, I was ready for one of the greatest Thanksgivings of all time. I'm like, if this is happening in the first quarter of the first game, we are in for a barnstormer this evening, because I'm just obsessed with Ben Johnson. I'm obsessed with that play call. It was unbelievable.
It got a standing ovation. A 3-yard sack has never been cheered louder from the home crowd than that play. And I don't know if they were cheering just because of the huevos on Ben Johnson to call it, or the fact that Penei Sewell, you can look in the box score and see that he got sacked. And now, yes, he's given up fewer sacks, 0 than sacks he's taken this year, 1. Maybe they were just cheering because 4 different Bears defenders tried to bring him down, and none even got him close. Like, his knees didn't buckle. The momentum took him over to the sideline, and the play then ended, but no one was getting that big boy down. And I'm a little disappointed, A, that he didn't complete a pass on that play, and then B, the second half went as it did, because my Penei Sewell for Offensive Player of the Year agenda was everything in the first half of that game. I was like, this thing actually might take off. He is a star of this game right now, and I don't think it's crazy to put him up there almost as a representative, but also because he's Penei Sewell, as a potential award winner this year on the best offense, the best team in the league. But then it quieted down a little, and it made me sour.
Your friend of mine, Ollie Connolly, did a really good piece about Penei Sewell this past week for The Guardian, and runs targeted behind Sewell this season, over 50% of them, 52.5%, go for a first down or a touchdown. And that's more than that's it. Basically, it's the most successful play in the NFL. It's just run behind Penei Sewell. And you mentioned my 49ers fandom earlier on. It's reminded me a lot of Trent Williams' season last season, where when Penei Sewell isn't in the lineup, they don't look anything like the same offense at all. And they just do so much with him and so much behind him. And I love the idea that we're under the lights. It's Thanksgiving. We haven't won on Thanksgiving in, 8-9 years now. And we're going to try and throw a touchdown with our best lineman. Like, I was so on board with it. It's a shame it didn't work, but yeah, I love the crowd reaction.
Yeah. How are the Bears ready for that? I guess they just the players just read that it was a pass play and didn't look up or something, because everyone was well covered on that play. There was nowhere. Good job quarterbacking by Penei Sewell, holding on to that ball. What a season for the Lions, ending that Thanksgiving streak. Who cares if it was close and you have some concerns? I know these are champagne problems. The injuries are the issue, but you are 11-1. You won on Thanksgiving, and now you got 2 big games coming up. Packers and Bills coming into Detroit. Well, for season ticket holders in Detroit, to have Thanksgiving against the Bears, then Packers, and then Bills, as you are unanimously the number 1 team in everyone's power rankings, the number 1 team in the NFC. What a time it is to be a Detroit Lions fan. Let's take a break. Let's get to a game everyone's excited about. Cowboys, Giants. We'll talk a little bit about our Thanksgiving. It's going to be great. But before we do that, let's listen to Dan Campbell talk about the Lions and their mindset with all the injuries that they have. We'll be back right after this.
Well, let me ask you this. Does it really matter? Like, who cares? And that's the thing. That's what I go back to, man. It doesn't matter. Like, either it is or it isn't, and we get a guy back, or we don't get a guy back. And worrying about it and moaning about it and bitching about it, it's like calls, right? It's like the call. It's like Vildor. I could sit there and throw a fit about it. What does it matter? It's called, it's done. So I know this, whoever we have available, we're going to get them ready to play, and we expect them to hold the line, period.
Giants are out at the 40, 1st and 10 after the kickoff return. Lock with play action. Screen, tipped up in the air and intercepted by RedZone. Running right to the goal line. Touchdown, Overshone. Oh, what an athletic play that is.
Brad Sham, KRLD. Like having Brad back on the show the last couple of weeks. DeMarvion Overshone with an incredibly athletic play. Not just tipping the ball up to himself and then running under it beautifully, but coming off a pretty vicious block on the running back even before tipping the ball. That was awesome. Cowboys defense gets it done, make Drew Lock look bad. Turnovers galore for the Giants. The Cowboys hold on for a 27-20 victory, their second straight win to get to 5-7. The Giants, they got a pretty good chance here to get the number 1 overall pick in this draft. They are at 2-10, and Will, they found a team in the Giants, Dallas did, that they could push around a little bit. That had to feel good. Like the offensive line for the Cowboys, I thought, played pretty well. They could run the ball. They protected Rush enough. And then defensively, Micah Parsons and Overshone and that front got after Drew Lock.
Yeah, Mike Parsons against Evan Neal might be the biggest mismatch we see in the NFL all season. Like it felt like abusive by the end of that game. I really I was just rotate them out. Just what swing tackles have you got? Just anyone. Just please, just put him out of his misery at this point. You mentioned I thought they were much better in the trenches on both sides of the ball over the last 2 weeks than they have been. There was a standout defensive performance, but Rico Dowdle's first career 100-yard rushing game. I still felt that Mike McCarthy made some weird play calls. Like there was a point where Rico Dowdle had an 18-yard pickup when they were up 2 scores and could go and kill the game off. And then he ran 3 consecutive passes for Cooper Rush. And you're just thinking, it's all working. The Giants are giving it up to you. Why are you just not absolutely running the ball down their throat in this situation? I totally get targeting Adoree Jackson. That makes complete sense to me. But outside of that, it didn't quite feel like it completely clicked on that side of the ball. But it felt like they're getting enough out of Cooper Rush and a really good defensive performance. And so, the Cowboys aren't back, but at least they've got something to enjoy as the season starts to reach its
No, they're going to win just enough games to kind of ruin their draft pick and all that. But hey, Micah Parsons was a late pick. Zach Martin was a late pick. Who was their center back in the day? Travis Frederick. I mean, they've had plenty of good late picks, so they can make their picks, and they'd much rather win on Thanksgiving, especially after the first 5 games that they had at home, which rivaled any team in NFL history in terms of point differential. That's how bad the Cowboys were at home. Yeah, Dowdle goes for 112. He gets 44 rushing yards over expected. And Cooper Rush, not a great or pretty thrower of the football, but he has gotten a little better each week this season that he's played. He ends up with 195 yards, 21 for 36, but there were a lot of drops. CeeDee Lamb had 3 drops on the game and then left with an injury, only 2 catches. And one thing Cooper Rush does a lot better than Drew Lock, who got the start over Tommy DeVito because DeVito was injured. He avoids sacks. The pressure rate for the Giants was actually 24%, which is low, but it's not like comically low. And they did not get any sacks on Cooper Rush, whereas the pressure rate on Drew Lock was 44%, and a lot of them were quick in his defense. But 6 sacks, 1.5 from Micah. Like Carl Lawson was in there. Odigizua was getting in the mix, and Lock was full locking. A couple fun runs in there, but a fumble on one of those runs, an interception, and yeah, man, this Giants season just can't end fast enough.
Yeah, he was by far their leading rusher on the night. But you look at they only orchestrated 2 plays of 20 yards or more in the whole game, and they were both Drew Lock scrambles. Like, this is just an offense. It's not working. It's not difficult to kind of look beyond that. He was at half, he was 8 of 17 for 55 yards, and actually of his 178 total, 68 of them came on that garbage time touchdown drive right at the end, where they were just giving him 18-yard pickup after 13-yard pickup after just just letting him move down the field.
Although it wasn't quite garbage time. I always struggle with like, what is garbage time? What isn't? They had a chance to win that game there. They kicked it off, they kicked it off to the Cowboys and made the Cowboys get a first down. If the Cowboys went 3 and out, which is a very normal thing for a 2024 Cowboys to do, they would have had to punt it to the Giants with a chance to win the game. Just saying.
But don't you feel like the defense then actually goes, "Oh, we should start playing again now"?
Right. That's why do defenses do that? I don't get that. I appreciated actually the Packers, after not playing well for most of the second half tonight, got very aggressive actually during Miami's deep garbage time drive and just didn't let them move the ball at all. And it was like, yes, that's how it should be. Just do that.
Giants fans are going to absolutely hate that I'm going to point this out, but I'm going to anyway. The money they saved from Saquon Barkley, they spent on Devin Singletary and Drew Lock. That's where you can draw the direct line because of how they paid all their contracts this year. They literally freed up $5 million and they went and spent it on a backup quarterback, and that's what they got out of it.
They spent twice as much money on Brian Burns is another way to look at it. And Brian Burns has been fine. He's been about what you would expect Brian Burns to be, but it's not changing their life.
Yeah, and look, that you can't. The Demarion Overshown play is like a freak moment, an unbelievable just piece of athleticism. One of the best plays we'll see all season. It'll be on highlights all year round. So you can't necessarily throw that back in their face. But other than that, they just didn't put anything together on offense at all. And I think it did highlight that Cowboys defense, 8 takeaways in their last 5 games now. Overshown, he actually recovered the fumble from the Eric Kendricks on the Tyron Tracy fumble as well. So what a game for him and what an emergence he's had. And it's why I keep going back to the fact that, both of these teams, well, are they actually? I was going to say both of these teams are going to be having a reset this offseason, but suddenly this past week, with back-to-back wins, with some murmurings from Jerry Jones on local radio, with suddenly people writing think pieces about it, or suddenly it might be that Mike McCarthy's staying in Dallas.
I don't buy that. I do not buy that.
Either, but
I guess they'd have to keep winning. Now they're 5-7. They have the Bengals, at Panthers, home for Bucks, at Philly, home for Washington. I mean, if they win 2 of those games, that would be outstanding. And even that would only get them to 7-10. It's more likely they win about 1 of those games. I mean, Tom Brady's with you. Tom Brady spent about 3 minutes at one point talking about that Mike McCarthy is one of the greatest coaches in the NFL. I'm less high on Tom Brady than you are. He always seems a little angry. And it's not just because of those quarterbacks. I think he wants to be good, and he's frustrated. He's not good. He's trying to have a good time. Maybe he's just not comfortable, and I think he will be more comfortable in the future because I do think he wants to be good, and that's it. But we're picking on him. It's just they came back from break, and Kevin Burkhardt was saying Happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and I saw Brady just sort of mouth Happy Thanksgiving. Everybody, but it wasn't his turn to speak, so he actually didn't say it, but it's just little moments like that.
Poor Kevin Burkhardt having to go from last year watching Greg Olsen tear that turducken apart with his bare hands like he was an absolute animal.
That was great.
To this year, and shout out to Ollie Hunter for this line on Twitter, but going to Tom Brady looking like it's the first time he's eaten human food. He was
I know. And then he tried to do hey, what would a cool tough guy do in this scenario? And then went hard at it.
Honestly, he was astonished at how good meat tasted. It's the first time he's had it in 25 years. It was one of the weirdest moments. And I am higher on Brady than you overall. I think he has improved over the season. And when they give him a chance to be a football nerd, I really enjoy it. And I like his anger. I think I liked his anger in this game, but actually the bit of anger I liked wasn't about the quarterback play going on the field. Actually, him going quite hard after Daniel Jones in the build-up, basically saying that by requesting a release, that's him giving up on the team who have invested so much in him. I don't agree with him, but at least it was a bit of honesty and a bit of forthrightness from Brady. I'd rather interesting opinions I disagree with than Jason Garrett. I mean,
I agree with that. That's a good take. I don't agree with it really either, but I hadn't heard that, and that's more compelling. He isn't afraid to be critical, which I'll give him credit for that. It's more just broadcasters, they need to be a good hang, right? On
Mhm.
some level, unless they're really teaching you a lot. I don't feel like he's a good hang yet, but maybe he'll get there.
It's funny because obviously coming someone from a radio background, like, we're broadcasting cricket right now, which is a little bit like baseball, this insanely long sport where you're just hearing the same 2, 3, 4 voices for what can be like 8 hours at a time. And so it needs to be driven by interesting people. And actually, even like the NFL in this country, when you compare it to like our football, soccer, like if somebody comes and listens to a talkSport broadcast of one of the London games or Germany or like the Super Bowl, and they listen, we have their company for 4 hours. And so if you are very straight down the line, or if you are boring, then, or you don't say anything interesting,
That's why you need to get Will Gavin on the mic.
But the thing is, it's not
Throw
the
in
reason
a little Nat Coombs,
Wonderful. I'm glad he got a mention because he would have been angry if he hadn't. Like, it's just it's not going to be the reason you turn off because you've tuned in for the game, not for the individuals necessarily, but it does elevate it when you do get like a Kevin Harlan or a Kevin Burkhardt or somebody's really, really good. Like, it does make a huge difference to your enjoyment of a bad game.
Yeah, this was a tough one because the Giants and Cowboys are great draws in the U.S., and I'm sure a lot of people will watch this game. This is traditionally the most watched game of the year, actually, the Cowboys Thanksgiving game of any football all season long. But, over there, it's like, I don't know if the Cowboys and the Giants are as big of a draw. And so I didn't feel good that this is the product that we're giving out there for everyone. Although the Fox, I did like they had the Cowboys and the Saints in their In the Hunt playoff graphic. So they're small victories. I was like, wow, okay. They're still in the hunt, 5-7. Let's put them in there. Saints, you're in the hunt.
If they're not mathematically out of it, you have to call them in the hunt. But
nobody's mathematically out of it. I don't think even the Giants are mathematically out of this. This would have to do it, you would think, right? Going into this week, they weren't. Maybe some other games will eliminate them. Just some other really small things in this game. Malik Neighbors game, like a couple bad plays. He's had some mental errors this year, but 3 really, really tough grabs in this game. Different types of ones. One on the sideline, one with a diving catch, one on a ball behind him. I mean, he is just a beautiful catcher of the football. Like, the offensive line for the Giants just made that offense unplayable, but he's awesome. And then Jonathan Mingo. It's not going to happen, I don't think, but they're just like hope ball after hope ball to Jonathan Mingo. And then welcome back Brandon Cooks. He actually made a big difference. He made an outstanding catch on that 3rd down with about under 2 minutes to go to put the game away. If Cooper Rush doesn't make a pretty good throw there and Cooks doesn't make that catch, the Giants get the ball back with a chance to win. I have no faith the Giants would have gone down the field and actually scored, but that play coming out of the 2-minute warning. Welcome back Brandon Cooks. He had 3 catches for 16 yards on 7 targets. Mingo, by the way, 2 yards on 4 targets. So there's your Cowboys. How was your Thanksgiving? Did you work the whole time, Will?
Yeah, like normally we try and do like a bunch of us will get together at a bar in central London or something, and like a lot of like the kind of American themed bars will do like a big roast dinner and put a turkey on, and like they'll put pumpkin pie on or something like that. And you can get like a little sense of Americana on the day. But actually today I knew I was coming on, so I was professional and I stayed at home and I made notes and I watched the games. Definitely nothing to do with recently becoming a dad and having to help out with feeds or anything. It was very much.
I thought you were like up working on talkSport till 5 a.m. My first thought was, well, who do I ask to work on Thanksgiving? How about someone that doesn't technically celebrate Thanksgiving? And then I thought, but that's making them up, making them stay up till 5 a.m, which is almost torture. Will Gavin, that's the man for it.
I did do a few updates on talkSport, so I did do a little bit of side. I had a bit of a side hustle, but the point is, Greg, that you were the main reason I'm still awake, and it's 5 to 6 in the morning. So just know that.
I appreciate it. Let's get Eric on here. My Thanksgiving, we picked up from a amazing barbecue place, Maple Block. I highly recommend it if you're in the Culver City or Los Angeles area. And they smoked that turkey. Smoked turkey is the way to go. It was so tender. It was delicious. My lovely wife Emeka, made some stuffing, made some cornbread, made dessert. We had some sides, but it doesn't hurt to order the sides. I mean, to order the turkey. It's fine if you don't, if you don't have all the time in the world. My parents were over. My friend Anthony was over, who I do the Jesselnick and Rosenthal Vanity Project, JRVP, with, and everyone should check out his.
Such a humble brag, my friend Anthony. Who,
I'm just saying, he was over.
I can't turn on my TV right now without his face showing up and being like, go on Netflix, watch Anthony Jeselnik's special. Eventually,
this was a long-winded way to say go check out his new special. I looked and they had the Netflix like top 10 or whatever, and my guy there is right there, number 3. People sick of watching 2.5 hour long movies. It's a nice 53-minute special, and it is absolutely hilarious. So it was a great Thanksgiving. I'm going to go and see
if he's top 10 in the UK.
Okay, let's calm down. And then Eric,
great if he was though, right?
Your first Thanksgiving with the baby, you went over to your mom's. How was it? The first Thanksgiving?
It was great. Lots of people around to hold the baby, so we're not, on full baby duty. But once we got home, it was very much, hey, I have not napped today, and it was it all caught up to us once we got home, and there was nobody else to kind of just, hey, be an aunt, be a grandma, be an uncle, hold the baby for us. And it was just, hey, dude, I am pissed and tired. And I'm, but no, he's sleeping now. So that's always good. It's always great when you bring me on and there's no baby crying in the background. So.
I should have thought about that too. Didn't even cross my mind. Wait, I don't even know, how deep is the Roberts family going here? I'm always fascinated by people's family. I come from a very small family, not just our size, because we are quite diminutive.
Older brother, younger sister, one niece, one nephew, 9 and 7.
Okay. So not a huge crew over there.
No.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that we were all able to do it. We were all able to manage it. Brought my parents back. They're staying at a place a couple blocks away. And then headed back here to talk to you, Will, and to work with you, Eric. And we'll end this thing because it's longer than I expected. And Eric's got to go edit out my swear at some point.
I need you to know that Anthony Jeselnik is in the top 10 on UK Netflix.
Let's go.
He's at 10, but it's still top 10.
Oh, you didn't need to do that. You didn't need to do that. No, but that's still strong. In the UK, that's strong. He had a nice show in London. And if you just give it the first 10 to 15 minutes. If you don't like that part, I don't know what's wrong with you. It's pretty hilarious, but you probably won't like the rest either. All right, that is it for our show. We are back on Friday. Special guest with Cynthia Freeland and I. It might be someone who was at my Thanksgiving dinner table today, who I also played tennis with. And thank you, Will. Again, thank you, Eric. The season starts at Thanksgiving, right? So I guess it's official. Like, football is back. It's over.